Got a big boy on the airwaves now. It's Eric Crocker. He's from Locked On 49ers podcast, and you also know him as former NFL defensive back and Stockton native. Before we get to it, Eric, I got to ask you, and I told my partner I was going to throw this to you. Could you imagine being a DB now in today's NFL? Because I just feel like it ain't fair, man. It's just not.
Nah, I definitely would have played receiver.
Oh, okay.
And the whole little guys play DBs because they can't catch. You know, that didn't apply to me. So in today's day and age, definitely play receivers. Almost impossible to be a legit, consistent cornerback.
Now, let's talk about week one in the Shy. To me, and I told Larry, the O-line concerns me. What's your biggest, what's on your list right now, your number one thing about this contest? What are you watching, Eric?
I think, obviously it's easy to start with the quarterback position, not knowing exactly what you'll get from Trey Lance. And you guys might hear some background noise. I'm at the airport right now, heading to Chicago. But, probably Trey Lance. And then, you talked about the offensive line, and the offensive line can help him a ton. So if, that is your biggest worry, if they come out, they play well, I think it'll make it a lot easier for a guy like Trey Lance. There's this kind of stat that's floating around, and I talked about it on the podcast the other day. But when it comes to rookie quarterbacks, and obviously we got a small sample size for Trey Lance, but rookie quarterbacks in the NFL with a clean pocket since 2016, according to Next Gen Stats, when they started keeping this stat, Trey Lance has the highest passer rating of any rookie quarterback. Now, again, smaller sample size, but that just shows if you do keep him clean, he can be effective. So I think things go a little haywire when you have to speed up his processing, but a good offensive line, that would definitely help the young quarterback.
I'm so glad we're having you on, Eric, because you're the perfect guy to ask this question to. I saw Greg Cosell kind of said that he felt like that Trey Lance is a hitch in his motion. I've been watching him throw. I don't necessarily call it a pure hitch. It's just like a little, almost like a baseball player has like a starting mechanism with his swing. He's got a little bit of a half circle on his release. You play DB. Is that the kind? And you watched the cut up films when you did play DB. When I say cut up, I'm talking about the quarterback making the throw to the receiver, and the DBs study that. You're studying it for movement. Do you see an issue with the hitch that is going to cause DBs to break early on Trey's throws and maybe lead to interceptions? Do you see anything that's severe?
I think if they're playing, more zone coverage, maybe that's something that you can pick up on. I think ultimately guys like him, it will probably be a little bit more worrisome if he didn't have a strong arm, right? So if you have kind of a weaker arm and you have kind of this timing mechanism that can kind of tip off when you're going to throw the ball, then that's something I can get a read on. But if that ball is coming out and it's coming out as hot as it can, out of his hands, Trey Lance, it might not be as much of an issue as it would be for an average arm quarterback. But as far as what I usually key as a defensive back, I'm looking more so at that kind of down and distance, what the alignment of a receiver, where they align, what do they like to do on these downs, and then more so concepts than actually like staring down the quarterback. When you stare down the quarterback, what happened to you is what happened to Jalen Ramsey last night when he got beat for that 50-yard touchdown by Stephon Diggs.
You're listening to Willard and Dibbs on 95.7 The Game. We had the pleasure to be joined by Eric Crocker on Locked On 49ers podcast. Eric, what excites me, and I think a lot of people, is what's the 49er offense going to look like? And we went back and forth like ping pong. Is it going to be the same? And I'm saying, hell no, it better not be the same, because Trey can do different things than Jimmy. What do you expect in regards to what it's going to look like, the plan of attack from the Niners offense this Sunday?
I think one thing is very clear, that I've seen with Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance, like kind of one of the biggest differences. I think even if you call the same exact play for both guys, they might throw it to a different guy, right? I think Trey Lance, one thing we've seen is his eyes are a little bit more aggressive, and that can be good and bad, right? Like he's going to push the envelope and push the ball down the field a little bit more, even if we're just talking about, a 15-yard drive throw, as opposed to Jimmy Garoppolo, who's going to be more consistent with getting his receivers run after catch opportunities right now underneath. So I'd say probably a little bit longer developing plays as Trey Lance continues to work on the timing, but definitely more throws outside the numbers and a little bit more down the field as opposed to what we've seen from Jimmy Garoppolo. So, again, it could be the same exact play call, but they just see the field much different.
Croc, what do you see with Hufanga? There were talk that coming out that maybe he was a special teamer, and then he just has continued to improve. Every time this team reconvenes, he's better. And then you see him, you talk to D'Amico. D'Amico loves him. He's doing all kinds of extra work. He's the first guy out there. He's the last guy off the field. What are you seeing with Hufanga, and do you think he's got enough speed to be able to defend the deep quadrants of the field?
Yeah, one thing, I watched a lot of Hufanga's film when he was coming out of USC, and he looked to be kind of a step slow. Like, when he has to be a little bit more honest with what he's seeing, a little bit step slow, and, that will cause him to miss tackles or take a bad angle. And I think at any level, whether it's collegiate level, when he's going to be successful, or the NFL, is going to be being able to stay a step ahead mentally, because he's not the most, physically gifted safety out there. So he was a guy who you could say is, I guess, a little bit more of an overachiever with his effort, and I was curious to see how that would translate to the NFL. If I know anything about the 49ers coaching staff and guys like D'Amico Ryans, they do a tremendous job of putting their players in advantageous situations. So I don't think they'll ask him to do too much of things that they know, like, oh man, we don't want to put him in this type of position. So I'd assume that he would do well. I think it just changes how you have to call plays, as opposed to having a guy like Jimmy Ward out there, or maybe two Jimmy Wards, where you could be much more versatile in the play calling.
It's Willard and Dibbs right here on 95.7 The Game. The voice you hear is that of Eric Crocker, Locked On 49ers podcast, former NFL DB. Eric, let me ask you this, man, because I'm telling Larry, so much of sports now has become off-the-field stuff, Kardashian stuff, and we had Captain Gate, and I thought Trey Lance, I like the fact he didn't get voted captain. That's telling me the veterans want him to earn it. But there was a name that I didn't hear that I thought should have been, and that's Deebo Samuel. You've been in the NFL locker room. You know the dynamic. Was that a big deal that we found out Deebo was not voted the captain?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you look at the guys that did get it, and those guys are all highly respected. They've all put in a lot of time with the 49ers. I know Deebo and Nick Bosa came in at the same time, and it was a little, I don't want to say a little strange, but it just depends on how people view some of these players, and it seems like everyone loves Deebo Samuel. They love his attitude. I think he should have been captain just based off how he handled his contract situation, where he felt like he was disgruntled, but then he showed up to everything, and he had high spirits, bounced around, and was a great teammate. But overall, I don't think that's something that these guys care about, man. Like, they get paid, and then they go out and do a job, and I think that's what they care about most important.
I'll tell you what jumps out to me is how well Trey looks throwing the deep ball. You played DB. When a team adds speed like Ray McLeod and maybe more specifically Danny Gray, how does that change your mindset when you're walking to the line of scrimmage on any down or distance?
Oh, man, it changes a lot, right? I talked about playing honest, right, when you have a guy like Hufanga out there at safety. And it's the same thing when you're playing the cornerback position. I want to know, okay, what do they like to do? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And we saw some of that last year where, Jimmy Garoppolo, he was able to overcome some of his, deficiencies in the sense of how he was able to, run an offense. But you saw those safeties starting to tighten down, put more guys in the box against the run, and how difficult that made it to run the ball in the playoffs. Well, with Trey Lance out there, just the threat of him throwing the deep ball, because he will push the envelope. You got to play more honest as a defense, so that should make it to where there's not as many guys in the box versus the run, and kind of open up things all over for you. So, good deep ball, but to me, it's more so just having the threat of it where it makes the defense have to play a little bit more honest.
Hey, thank you so much, Eric. Safe travels and enjoy your time in the Chi, and hopefully the Niners get it done. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric.